you're angry, are you? Well, join the party. I've been here 1,000 years. I was building that dagger to protect myself against you, Nick. I'm not the bad guy in this chapter of our family's story. I'm the wronged, I'm the dead but never mourned. And whilst you got everything that you wanted, I got a family who didn't care if I lived or if I died.
Oh, shut up. We've all suffered. We've all been wrong.
Go on, finish it off. Go on, kill me.
I'm not gonna kill you, you idiot. Despite your behavior, you're still my brother.
Just the one you dagger repeatedly.
I've daggered all of you, each for your own good. If you don't agree with my motives, fine. I never claimed to be the bastion of temperance, but stop this drivel about being singled out and unloved. You are a Mikaelson. You're my blood. And I need you. I need you by my side.
Kol is probably the most misunderstood character in the entirety of the verse, mainly because a lot of people actually mischaracterize his character by simplifying it. I'm of course referring to the reason why Kol acts the way that he acts, as in the reason why he's that violent in the first place. And a lot of people assume that the reason why Kol was actually that violent was because he was a Ripper. It was not. And he wasn't a Ripper either. But I'll go through more of that shortly. Firstly, we only really know one thing about Kol before he became a vampire, meaning that there wasn't really much of a point for me to go through his backstory before he became a vampire. Because other than that one thing, we know absolutely nothing about him. Literally, I don't remember him saying a single word as a human. In fact, up until the point in which they met the Demartels in southern France, I really don't remember Kol ever saying a single word. We just knew he happened to be there. We didn't really get to see him that much. But anyways, I'm just going to go for the first misconception about Kol's character, which is, was he a Ripper? Like I said earlier on, no, he was not. I think a lot of people assume just because he was violent, the label of being a Ripper should be put on him. It was also the same thing with Elijah and the Red Door. Just because Elijah has an alter ego, well, not necessarily an alter ego, but just a really dark side to him, it doesn't necessarily mean that he was a Ripper. He was just a vampire. The reason why it seems like an alter ego is because Elijah blocks that violent aspects of him. More specifically when he does ridiculously violent acts. He's just a vampire that is violent just like his siblings. Rebekah as well, as we saw, is also violent. Doesn't make her a Ripper, although Rebekah is the least likely to actually attack you. So all of the Mikaelson siblings were violent. We don't know much about Finn, but based on the fact that he hated himself, very likely means he was very violent. Until obviously he learned to control his bloodlust. Yes, of course, Kol is the most violent vampire I've ever seen, but that doesn't necessarily make him a Ripper. There are a lot of people that are close to, if not just as violent as Kol, and also acts in a similar way to Kol, and none of them were labeled as a Ripper. Klaus is just as violent as Kol and is probably has killed just as much as he has, but he was never labeled as a Ripper. He's just Klaus. He's just violent, that's just who he is. He has a reason to be violent, which is the fact that he wants to be feared, and thus people will actually fear his family because of him. Damon is also another person that's excessively violent that isn't a Ripper. In fact, Damon loves playing with his food, something that Rippers are famous for doing. Like, there's so many examples of vampires being excessively violent and not being Rippers. There's also Julian, Sebastian, the Heretics, Kai, and so on. Vampires who are known to be violent excessively, but not being Rippers. Now, was Kol ever a Ripper? Yes, in season 3 of the originals, but before that, he was not a Ripper. So if he wasn't a Ripper when he became a vampire, why does he actually act like that? Why is it that he's so violent? And to answer that question is because Kol never really tried to control his hunger. His siblings became more darker and psychotic the longer they lived and became more of monsters than humans, but they had complete control over their hunger. If they do feed, they never really feed excessively, except for Kol, mainly because they train to control their hunger. This is mainly because when vampires first turn, they act like Rippers, as in, they act like Kol, Klaus, Damon, and so on. Mainly because they don't see humans as humans, they just see them as food. All they see is a blood bag, and they are always hungry until they're able to actually train themselves to be able to control their hunger, to the point of controlling themselves around blood in general. The vampires that we saw that wasn't excessively feeding actually tried to control that aspect of themselves. Caroline first became a vampire. The moment that she smells blood, she wants to drink it. It doesn't matter if she was hurting somebody, that's how she ended up killing someone. But with Stefan's help, she was able to train that aspect out of herself. and was able to function in society without being a bloodthirsty maniac. With Kol now, he just didn't try to train the aspect out of himself, he just continued the way that he was. So imagine a bloodthirsty cowline that we saw at the carnival, and she stayed the same way and she had zero control over her thirst for blood, not only for that night but for centuries. That's basically Kol. And the reason why Kol never really tried to was because he wasn't only hungry, he was also angry. And the reason why he was angry was because of the one thing I said we actually know about Kol with regards to him before he became a vampire. And that is because except for Freya, Kol was the only one of the Mikaelson siblings that was actually practicing magic. The other ones that became vampires were untapped witches. Kol, however, was a practicing witch, and he lost that ability when he was forced to become a vampire. Him practicing magic isn't just something that Kol just does recreationally. It's a big deal to him. It is the one thing that makes him unique from his siblings. Seeing as he believed that Freya had already died, none of his siblings could perform magic except for him, making him special, making him the one that stands out, making him one of the siblings that Esther spends a lot of time with, which validates his existence. This will become important later on because this is a big deal and this is something that plagued Kol his entire life. But again, just like Klaus being a hybrid, Kol being a witch became his identity. So when that was taken away from him, against his will, he became really angry and needs to actually take it out on somebody. He can't take it out on Esther because Klaus has already done that and has already killed Esther for that exact same reason. He can't take it out on Michael because Michael beat the brakes off of him. He can't take it out of his siblings because they will also beat the brakes off of him. The only person that he might be able to beat are Finn and Rebekah, but that's a 50-50. And if he tries to harm Rebekah, then he will probably have to answer to Klaus and Elijah. So he really has no one to take out his pent-up aggression on. Everyone that is responsible for what has actually happened to him, he can't really attack, which leaves the people that he can attack and release his aggression upon, humans. So he used excessive violence as escapism to avoid the fact that he just lost a large chunk of his identity. The part of his identity that actually made him unique compared to his siblings. And his excessive violence got to the point in which it became his identity. And because after Finn was left that good, all of his siblings actually learned how to control their hunger, meaning that Kol was the only one that's like that. Kol was the only one that has zero control over his hunger because he never learned to, or at least he never tried to learn to. Although he wants to be unique, he wants to stand out, however also wants the love and admiration from his siblings that he did with his mother. He believes that the thing that allows him to actually do that was by being unique, as in being the one that stands out. If he believes he's special, everyone wants to gravitate towards him. However, it didn't work out that way because the person that he wants to be, the person that he believes he could be, the special person that everyone gravitates towards them because they're special and because they're unique, that place in the family was already taken by Klaus. Kol, however, didn't become the unique person that everyone gravitated towards. He became a liability, just like Finn. And what he quickly realized, just like with Finn, the moment that you become a liability, you automatically become ostracized. Meaning that you are basically not part of the family, you are just there. So Kol finds himself in a situation in which he both wants to have his cake and eat it at the same time. It doesn't work that way. He wants to be really unique from his siblings using the identity that he's already created for himself, which is done through him being excessively violent. However, him being excessively violent doesn't make him special, it just makes him a liability. So you can either not be unique at all and fall back in line just like how Rebekah did in order for his siblings to actually view him as part of the family, or he can continue with the identity that he's already created and be ostracized by his family even though technically speaking they still consider him a brother. And Kol went for the latter because again, Kol, although wants to be close with his siblings and want his siblings to acknowledge him, he also wants to be unique. He wants to be his own person. He doesn't want to be the person that falls in line, like Rebekah. And as he noticed throughout the Vampire Diaries and the originals, Klaus and Elijah struggle to control Kol. You physically cannot tell Kol to not do something because he's going to do it anyways. Because he likes being his own person, he doesn't follow people, he doesn't like being a follower. And just like how Klaus deduced in season 2 of the originals, Kol wanted attention, but he didn't want to lose the identity that he's already created for himself. So he tried to call out for attention by using his new identity. So he became even more violent. So the only way that he can reach out to his siblings and not lose his personality and not lose his identity and still being himself was by being even more violent. This is done so that he can piss off his siblings so they understand that Kol actually exists. Which is a double-edged sword because although yes, he gets the attention of his siblings, it is not the right attention. Not only based on the fact that he refuses to listen to anyone, He wants to do what he wants to do with no consequence. He also is an active threat in actually drawing Michael to where they actually are by being too violent, taking out too many people, leaving out too many bodies. And although it was tolerable before, it became a massive problem when Michael was able to find them because of Kol. So he got daggered, and then when he was on dagger later on, he did something so insane that he definitely deserved to be daggered again. Because this man made Marcel, an 11-year-old by the way, watch a play in which the deaths in the play is acted out to 100% accuracy. Meaning if you die in the play, you are dead in real life. And he made an 11-year-old watch that. And Kol going up against Klaus continued all the way up onto the originals. Now there is one thing of note that is really important to actually point out, which is based on the dynamics of the family, specifically with Kol, and is that Kol wasn't necessarily close to any of his siblings except for one. Even when he refuses to fall in line, even when he actively told them that he does not care whether or not Klaus dies, he just wants to have fun. Hence why Klaus and Elijah don't particularly like having him around. He is way too violent and he isn't strategic about his violence. Klaus could be very violent, but it's usually done for a reason. Kol, however, there is no reason, he's just that violent. Now, even if you say Klaus is just as violent and just as likely to draw Michael's attention, and then you ask why exactly does his siblings actually love him but are a bit distant when it comes to Kol? And that is because for Elijah, he believed he failed Klaus as a human, and also he failed Klaus when they were still living with Michael and Esther. He believed he is the reason why the hybrid curse was placed on him. He believed he is the reason why Michael continued beating him. Rebekah was going to kill Michael, but Elijah stopped her from doing it, which further along everything that happened to them. In fact, Elijah probably blames himself for everyone becoming vampires, because if he would have let Rebekah kill Michael that day, none of that would have happened. Hence why he's that adamant on actually finding redemption for Klaus. Hence why he seems codependent on Klaus, because he believes Klaus's happiness is now his immortal life purpose. A sentiment that is not shown towards Kol because Elijah doesn't particularly believe that he failed Kol specifically. The only way he might have failed Kol is the fact that they became vampires. And the worse Kol behaves, the harder it became to control. He was not going to put Kol's happiness over Klaus, who he believed he owes it to him. Now obviously Finn doesn't particularly like any of his siblings. And then you fall to Rebekah. Rebekah is the only person that actually shared a positive relationship with Kol. And the reason why this happened, just like I said with Rebekah's video, which is that once Rebekah labels the relationship as love, it is automatically unconditional. But if you give her a decision in which she has to choose between two people that she has unconditional love for, she's just going to pick the person that she loves more. Hence why she tends to pick Klaus over Kol. However, no matter how many rebellions Kol does, no matter what Kol says to Elijah about whether or not he actually cares about Klaus dying to Michael, Rebekah would still love him anyways, and is usually the one that Kol tends to vent to, mainly because Kol believes that him and Rebekah are the same. Now, there's also something that I actually didn't mention earlier, which actually occurred before Kol was daggered the first time, which is that Kol actually spent a large chunk of his life around witches and not his siblings. Kol traveled the world, meeting a lot of different witches, living with different covens all around the world. Different countries, different regions, different cultures, different practices. Hence why Kol is probably one of the most knowledgeable characters when it comes to magic. But all of this is done so that Kol can actually feel like he's still a witch. Hence why when he got all of this knowledge, he actually stored all of it in dozens of grimoires. And then using this grimoire and his knowledge, he tries to teach other witches who don't know about certain spells how to actually perform it. Because again, he needs to feel like he's part of a coven. He needs to feel like he's still a witch. He needs to feel that he still has what he's lost permanently. But anyways, now we get to Davina. Why did that relationship make sense and why did it work for Kol? Why did it benefit Kol specifically when it comes to his psyche?
Kol, I've heard the stories. When you were a vampire, you were
a psychotic maniac. But I didn't have you. Are you worth being good for? I promise you can trust me.
Now you might say, wait, Kol changed for Davina but not for his siblings? And there's a reason for that. The reason why that actually happened for Davina and not for his siblings is because Davina picked Kol over everyone. Davina's love for Kol became paramount to her existence. The only person that Davina could possibly love as much as she loves Kol is Marcel. Davina didn't particularly care about how psychotic Kol was in his past life, basically simplifying as Davina extending an olive branch of love, and Kol needs to actually reciprocate, not just by loving Davina back, but actually becoming a better person for Davina. Why? Because Davina actually saw the good in Kol, mainly because she didn't initially meet the psychotic version of Kol that we knew of before he actually showed up in the originals. Now that I've covered everything about Kol's psychology, there's still one more thing I must talk about, which is that Kol basically got the same treatment that Elijah and Damon actually got. In fact, I think Klaus was going to get if he actually stayed in the Vampire Diaries, which is being placed in a repetition cycle, mainly because the writers just don't know exactly what to do with that specific character, which is the exact same problem I said I had with Elijah, which is that Elijah basically became a non-factor, and his storylines basically became repetitive, or just boring, or just not important. Now with Kol, in his first season, he was fantastic. Like, he was really well written, way better than what he was in the Vampire Diaries. Then he died, and that's basically it for his character. Other than the fact that he killed Davina in season 3, nothing of note actually came from his existence. He was just a snarky Mikaelson. And in season 4, again, same thing. Had one great scene against Klaus when Klaus got angry at the fact that he was helping the Hollow and he actually had to fight against Klaus, and told Klaus exactly why he had to help the Hollow, and got Klaus to back down because the way that he views Davina is the same way Klaus viewed Cammy. But other than that, in season 4 he was a non-factor. The same thing with season 5. In fact, season 5 is even worse because they tried to recycle an old storyline of him still hating Klaus and still being resentful towards Klaus when Klaus was about to die. Even though that storyline was already settled, Klaus already knows why Kol was acting like that, and Kol already found out exactly why Klaus constantly daggered him, which is just a psychotic way to protect not only the rest of the Mikaelsons, but also Kol himself. Because like we saw in the Vampire Diaries, when he was allowed to do whatever he wanted, he died. But that whole storyline was sorted out and already completed in season 2. But the same storyline was still recycled in season 5. But anyways, I did a similar psychological breakdown for Rebekah, in which I went in detail as to why Rebekah behaves the way that she behaves, and also how she got to that point in the first place. And if you haven't watched that yet, then click on the video that's on screen now.